Welcome to Tech with Kaushik. This is part 10 of our complete practice question series for the CLF-C02, AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner exam. Choose your answer before the timer ends, then review the correct answer, explanation, and exam tip. Let us begin part 10. Question number 498. What design principle aligns with performance efficiency pillar of the AWS well-architected framework? Option A. Using serverless architectures. Option B. Scaling horizontally. Option C. Measuring the cost of workloads. Option D. Using managed services. The correct answer is A. Using serverless architectures. Here is why. Using serverless architectures is a performance efficiency design principle that removes server management and uses cloud-scale managed services. Why are the other options not correct? B. Horizontal scaling is associated strongly with reliability and scalability. C. Measuring workload cost belongs to cost optimization. D. Managed services can reduce operations but is not the listed design principle. Exam tip. Performance efficiency recommends using serverless architectures. Question number 499. An organization needs to set up a secure network connection from on-premises to the AWS cloud within 1 week. What solution can satisfy these requirements? Option A. AWS Direct Connect. Option B. Amazon VPC. Option C. AWS Site-to-Site VPN. Option D. Edge location. The correct answer is C. AWS Site-to-Site VPN. Here is why. Site-to-Site VPN creates an encrypted connection over the internet and can generally be implemented faster than dedicated physical connectivity. Why are the other options not correct? A. Direct Connect requires dedicated connectivity and can take longer to arrange. B. Amazon VPC provides a virtual network but not the on-premises connection alone. D. An edge location supports edge services, not private hybrid connectivity. Exam tip. VPN is fast to deploy, Direct Connect provides dedicated connectivity. Question number 500. An organization needs to convert video files and audio files to a format that will play on smartphones. What AWS service can satisfy this requirement? Option A. Amazon Comprehend. Option B. Amazon Recognition. Option C. Amazon Elastic Transcoder. Option D. Amazon Poly. The correct answer is C. Amazon Elastic Transcoder. Here is why. Elastic Transcoder historically converted audio and video into formats and resolutions suitable for smartphones and other playback devices. Why are the other options not correct? A. Comprehend extracts insights and entities from text. B. Recognition analyzes images and video but does not transcode media files. D. Poly converts text into synthesized speech. Exam tip. Elastic Transcoder was replaced for modern workloads by AWS Elemental Media Convert. Question number 501. An organization wants an Amazon S3 solution that provides access to object storage within single-digit milliseconds. What solution can satisfy these requirements? Option A. S3 Express 1 Zone. Option B. S3 Standard. Option C. S3 Glacier Flexible Retrieval. Option D. S3 Glacier Instant Retrieval. The correct answer is A. S3 Express 1 Zone. Here is why. S3 Express 1 Zone is designed to provide consistent single-digit millisecond access for latency-sensitive object storage workloads. Why are the other options not correct? B. S3 Standard provides low latency but is not the specialized Express class. C. Glacier Flexible Retrieval requires archive retrieval before access. D. Glacier Instant Retrieval targets rarely accessed archival data. Exam tip. S3 Express 1 zone provides the lowest latency S3 object access. Question number 502. An independent software vendor needs to deliver and share its custom Amazon Machine Images, AMIs, to prospective customers. What AWS service can satisfy these requirements? Option A. AWS Marketplace. Option B. AWS Data Exchange. Option C. Amazon EC2. Option D. AWS Organizations. The correct answer is A. AWS Marketplace. Here is why. AWS Marketplace enables software vendors to publish and distribute products such as custom AMIs to AWS customers. Why are the other options not correct? B. Data Exchange distributes third-party datasets. C. Amazon EC2 can create and share AMIs but is not the commercial marketplace. D. Organizations centrally manages multiple AWS accounts. Exam tip. AWS Marketplace distributes third-party software and AMI products. Question number 503. What component must be attached to a VPC to enable inbound internet access? Option A. NAT gateway. Option B. VPC endpoint. Option C. VPN connection. Option D. Internet gateway. The correct answer is D. Internet gateway. Here is why. An Internet gateway attaches to a VPC and enables communication between appropriately configured VPC resources and the Internet. Why are the other options not correct? A. A NAT gateway primarily provides outbound access for private resources. B. A VPC endpoint provides private access to supported services. C. A VPN connection links external networks to a VPC. Exam tip. Internet access requires an Internet gateway and appropriate routing. Question number 504. An organization needs to continuously improve processes and procedures to deliver business value. What pillar of the AWS well-architected framework does this goal represent? Option A. Performance efficiency. Option B. Operational excellence. Option C. Reliability. Option D. Sustainability. The correct answer is B. Operational excellence. Here is why. Operational excellence focuses on delivering business value by running, monitoring, learning from, and continually improving processes. Why are the other options not correct? A. Performance efficiency focuses on efficient resource use. C. Reliability focuses on consistent operation and recovery from failures. D. Sustainability focuses on minimizing environmental impact. Exam tip. Continuous process improvement indicates operational excellence. Question number 505. An administrator observed that multiple AWS resources were deleted yesterday. What AWS service will help identify the cause and determine which user deleted the resources? Option A. AWS Cloud Trail. Option B. Amazon Inspector. Option C. Amazon Guard Duty. Option D. AWS Trusted Advisor. The correct answer is A. AWS Cloud Trail. Here is why. Cloud Trail record supported AWS API activity and identifies the principal that issued resource deletion requests. Why are the other options not correct? B. Inspector identifies vulnerabilities and unintended exposure. C. Guard Duty detects suspicious or malicious activity. D. Trusted Advisor provides best practice recommendations. Exam tip. Cloud Trail shows who performed an AWS API action and when. Question number 506. An organization hosts a web application on AWS. The company has improved the availability of its application by provisioning multiple Amazon EC2 instances. The company needs to distribute its traffic across the EC2 instances while providing a single point of contact to the web clients. What AWS service can distribute the traffic to multiple EC2 instances as targets? Option A, VPC endpoints. Option B, Application Load Balancer. Option C, NAT Gateway. Option D, Internet Gateway. The correct answer is B, Application Load Balancer. Here is why. An application load balancer provides one application endpoint and distributes web requests across multiple healthy EC2 targets. Why are the other options not correct? A. VPC endpoints provide private access to supported services. C. A NAT gateway provides outbound internet access for private resources. D. An internet gateway connects a VPC to the internet. Exam tip. A load balancer provides one endpoint for multiple application targets. Question number 507. An organization needs to transfer a virtual Windows Server 2022 that is currently running in its own data center to AWS. The company needs to automatically convert the existing server to run directly on AWS infrastructure instead of visualized hardware. What AWS service can satisfy these requirements? Option A. AWS Data Sync. Option B. AWS Database Migration Service, AWS DMS. Option C. AWS Application Discovery Service. Option D. AWS Application Migration Service. The correct answer is D. AWS Application Migration Service. Here is why. Application Migration Service replicates source servers and converts them to run natively as EC2 instances on AWS infrastructure. Why are the other options not correct? A. DataSync transfers file and object data. B. AWS DMS migrates supported databases. C. Application Discovery Service collects migration planning information. Exam tip. Application Migration Service performs lift and shift server migration. Question number 508. An organization needs to visualize and manage AWS cloud costs and usage for a specific period of time. What AWS service or feature can satisfy these requirements? Option A, Cost Explorer. Option B, Consolidated Billing. Option C, AWS Organizations. Option D, AWS Budgets. The correct answer is A, Cost Explorer. Here is why. Cost Explorer visualizes, filters, and analyzes AWS cost and usage data over selected historical and forecast periods. Why are the other options not correct? B. Consolidated billing combines charges from organization accounts. C. Organization centrally manages multiple AWS accounts. D. AWS budgets track spending against thresholds and sends alerts. Exam tip. Cost Explorer analyzes spending, budgets alerts on limits. Question number 509. An organization needs to build an application that uses AWS Lambda to run Python code. Under the AWS shared responsibility model, which tasks will be the company's responsibility? Choose 2. Option A, management of the underlying infrastructure. Option B, management of the operating system. Option C, writing the business logic code. Option D, installation of the computer language runtime. E, providing AWS identity and access management, IAM, access to the Lambda service. The correct answer is C, writing the business logic code. E, providing AWS identity and access management, IAM, access to the Lambda service. Here is why. The company writes and secures its function code and configures IAM permissions. AWS manages the infrastructure, operating system, and runtime. Why are the other options not correct? A. AWS manages Lambda's underlying infrastructure. B. AWS manages the operating system. D. AWS installs and maintains supported managed language runtimes. Exam tip. Lambda customers manage code, data, configuration, and IAM permissions. Question number 510. What does security of the cloud refer to in the AWS shared responsibility model? Option A. Availability of AWS services such as Amazon EC2. Option B. Security of the cloud infrastructure that runs all the AWS services. Option C. Implementation of password policies for IAM users. Option D. Security of customer environments by using AWS network firewall partners. The correct answer is B. Security of the cloud infrastructure that runs all the AWS services. Here is why. Security of the cloud refers to AWS protecting the facilities, hardware, software, networking, and infrastructure that operate AWS services. Why are the other options not correct? A. Service availability is an outcome, not the complete responsibility definition. C. Customers implement password and identity policies. D. Customers and partners manage controls deployed in customer environments. Exam tip. AWS secures the cloud infrastructure, customers secure what they deploy. Question number 511. An organization has an application that produces unstructured data continuously. The company needs to store the data so that the data is durable and easy to query. What AWS service can the company use to satisfy these requirements? Option A. Amazon RDS. Option B. Amazon Aurora. Option C. Amazon QuickSight. Option D. Amazon DynamoDB. The correct answer is D. Amazon DynamoDB. Here is why. DynamoDB is a durable, managed NoSQL database that stores flexible data and supports low-latency queries by primary key and indexes. Why are the other options not correct? A. Amazon RDS is a managed relational database service. B. Amazon Aurora is a managed relational database compatible with MySQL and PostgreSQL. C. Amazon QuickSight provides business intelligence dashboards, not data storage. Exam tip. DynamoDB is a managed NoSQL database for flexible key value and document data. Question number 512. What AWS service can a company use to manage encryption keys in the cloud? Option A. AWS License Manager. Option B. AWS Certificate Manager, ACM. Option C. AWS Cloud HSM. Option D. AWS Directory Service. The correct answer is C. AWS Cloud HSM. Here is why. Cloud HSM provides dedicated hardware security modules for generating, storing, and managing cryptographic keys in the AWS cloud. Why are the other options not correct? A. License Manager tracks and controls software license usage. B. ACM provisions and manages supported TLS certificates. D. Directory Service provides managed directory capabilities. Exam tip. Cloud HSM provides dedicated HSMs for customer-controlled cryptographic keys. Question number 513. An organization runs a legacy workload in an on-premises data center. The company needs to migrate the workload to AWS. The company does not want to make any changes to the workload. What migration strategy should the company use? Option A. Repurchase. Option B. Replatform. Option C. Rehost. Option D. Refactor. The correct answer is C. Rehost. Here is why. Rehosting moves an existing workload to AWS with minimal or no application changes and is commonly called lift and shift. Why are the other options not correct? A. Repurchasing replaces the workload with another product. B. Replatforming makes targeted changes to use a different managed platform. D. Refactoring redesigns the application for cloud-native capabilities. Exam tip. Rehost means lift and shift with minimal workload changes. Question number 514. For which use case are Amazon EC2 on-demand instances most cost-effective? Option A. Compute-intensive video transcoding that can be restarted if necessary. Option B. An instance in continual use for 1 month to conduct quality assurance tests. Option C. An instance that runs a web server that will run for 1 year. Option D. An instance that runs a database that will run for 3 years. The correct answer is B. An instance in continual use for 1 month to conduct quality assurance tests. Here is why. On-demand instances require no long-term commitment and suit a temporary, uninterruptible workload that runs for only 1 month. Why are the other options not correct? A. Restartable video transcoding can use lower-cost spot instances. C. A 1-year web server can benefit from a commitment-based discount. D. A 3-year database can benefit from a long-term commitment. Exam tip. Use on-demand for short-term workloads that cannot tolerate interruption. Question number 515. An organization runs an uninterruptible Amazon EC2 workload on AWS 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The company will require the same instance family and instance type to run the workload for the next 12 months. What combination of purchasing options should the company choose to most optimize costs? Choose 2. Option A. Standard reserved instance. Option B. Convertible reserved instance. Option C. Compute savings plan. Option D. Spot instance. E. All upfront payment. The correct answer is A. Standard reserved instance, E. All upfront payment. Here is why. A standard reserved instance suits fixed, continuous 1-year EC2 usage. Paying all upfront provides the greatest discount among its payment options. Why are the other options not correct? B. Convertible RIs trade some discount for configuration flexibility that is not required. C. Compute savings plans provide flexibility that this fixed workload does not require. D. Spot instances can be interrupted and do not suit an uninterruptible workload. Exam tip. Fixed EC2 usage favors standard RIs, all upfront maximizes the discount. Question number 516. An organization is planning to migrate to the AWS cloud. The company needs to understand the existing on-premises usage and configuration. The company does not want to replicate its workloads to AWS, yet. What AWS service or tool can satisfy these requirements? Option A. AWS Application Discovery Service. Option B. AWS Application Migration Service. Option C. Cloud Migration Factory. Option D. AWS Transfer Family. The correct answer is A. AWS Application Discovery Service. Here is why. Application Discovery Service historically collected server configuration, utilization, and dependency information for migration assessment without replicating workloads. Why are the other options not correct? B. Application Migration Service replicates and migrates servers to AWS. C. Cloud Migration Factory helps automate and coordinate large migration programs. D. Transfer Family provides managed file transfers using supported protocols. Exam tip. Discovery assesses existing workloads, migration services move or replicate them. Question number 517. An organization has an on-premises application. The application has processing times of less than 5 minutes and is invoked only a few times each day. The company needs to move the application to the AWS cloud. What AWS service will support this application most cost-effectively? Option A. Amazon Elastic Container Service, Amazon ECS. Option B. AWS Lambda. Option C, Amazon Elastic Kubernetes Service, Amazon EKS. Option D, Amazon EC2. The correct answer is B. AWS Lambda. Here is why. Lambda runs short, event-driven code without managing servers and charges for execution, making it cost-effective for a function invoked only a few times daily. Why are the other options not correct? A. ECS runs containers and can require continuously available compute capacity. C. EKS is managed Kubernetes and adds unnecessary operational complexity. D. EC2 requires paying for and managing virtual servers while they run. Exam tip. Lambda suits short, infrequent, event-driven processing without server management. Question number 518. What AWS service can migrate Amazon EC2 instances from one AWS region to another? Option A. AWS Application Migration Service. Option B. AWS Database Migration Service, AWS DMS. Option C. AWS Data Sync. Option D. AWS Migration Hub. The correct answer is A. AWS Application Migration Service. Here is why. AWS Application Migration Service, now AWS Transform MGN, can replicate and rehost EC2 workloads from one AWS region into another region. Why are the other options not correct? B. AWS DMS migrates supported databases. C. DataSync transfers file and object data between supported storage systems. D. Migration Hub tracks migrations but does not move EC2 instances. Exam tip. Application Migration Service rehosts physical, virtual, and cloud servers on EC2. Question number 519. An organization needs to deploy an application that stores data in a relational database. The company wants database tasks, such as automated backups and database snapshots, to be managed by AWS. What AWS service can satisfy these requirements? Option A, Amazon Document DB. Option B, Amazon RDS. Option C, Amazon Elastic Block Store, Amazon EBS. Option D, Amazon S3. The correct answer is B, Amazon RDS. Here is why. Amazon RDS provides managed relational databases and automates tasks such as backups, snapshots, patching, and infrastructure maintenance. Why are the other options not correct? A. DocumentDB is a managed document database. C. Amazon EBS provides block storage rather than a managed database. D. Amazon S3 provides object storage. Exam tip. RDS manages relational database infrastructure and routine administration. Question number 520. An organization needs to use a managed service to identify and protect sensitive data that is stored in Amazon S3. What AWS service can satisfy these requirements? Option A. AWS IAM Access Analyzer. Option B, Amazon Guard Duty. Option C, Amazon Inspector. Option D, Amazon Macie. The correct answer is D, Amazon Macie. Here is why. Amazon Macie discovers, classifies, and helps protect sensitive data stored in Amazon S3 by using machine learning and pattern matching. Why are the other options not correct? A. IAM Access Analyzer identifies external or unintended resource access. B. Guard Duty detects threats and malicious activity. C. Inspector identifies software vulnerabilities and unintended network exposure. Exam tip. Macie discovers sensitive data in S3, Guard Duty detects threats. Question number 521. What pillar of the AWS well-architected framework aligns with the ability to make frequent, small, and reversible changes to AWS Cloud? Architecture, Option A, security. Option B, cost optimization. Option C, operational excellence. Option D, performance efficiency. The correct answer is C, operational excellence. Here is why. Operational excellence recommends frequent, small, reversible changes to improve workloads while limiting the impact of unsuccessful updates. Why are the other options not correct? A. Security focuses on protecting information, systems, and assets. B. Cost optimization focuses on eliminating unnecessary spending. D. Performance efficiency focuses on efficient resource selection and use. Exam tip. Small, frequent, reversible changes indicate operational excellence. Question number 522. An organization is running a reporting web server application on Amazon EC2 instances. The application runs once every week and once again at the end of the month. The EC2 instances can be shut down when they are not in use. What is the most cost-effective billing model for this use case? Option A, standard reserved instances. Option B, convertible reserved instances. Option C, on-demand capacity reservations. Option D, on-demand instances. The correct answer is D, on-demand instances. Here is why. On-demand instances have no long-term commitment and allow the company to pay only while the reporting servers are running. Why are the other options not correct? A. Standard RIs require a commitment that is inefficient for infrequent usage. B. Convertible RIs also require a long-term commitment. C. Capacity reservations reserve capacity and are billed while active, even when unused. Exam tip. On-demand suits intermittent workloads that can be stopped between runs. Question number 523. An organization needs to identify who accessed an AWS service and what action was performed for a given time period. What AWS service should the company use to satisfy this requirement? Option A, Amazon Cloud Watch. Option B, AWS Cloud Trail. Option C, AWS Security Hub. Option D, Amazon Inspector. The correct answer is B, AWS Cloud Trail. Here is why. Cloud Trail Record supported AWS API and account activity, including the identity that accessed a service, the action performed, and when it occurred. Why are the other options not correct? A. CloudWatch monitors metrics, logs, and alarms. C. Security Hub aggregates security findings. D. Inspector identifies software vulnerabilities and unintended exposure. Exam tip. Cloud Trail identifies who performed an AWS API action and when. Question number 524. An organization needs to run CPU-intensive workload across multiple Amazon EC2 instances. What EC2 instance type should the company use to satisfy this requirement? Option A, general-purpose instances. Option B, compute-optimized instances. Option C, memory-optimized instances. Option D, storage-optimized instances. The correct answer is B, compute-optimized instances. Here is why. Compute-optimized instances provide a high ratio of compute power to memory and are designed for CPU-intensive workloads. Why are the other options not correct? A. General-purpose instances balance compute, memory, and networking. C. Memory-optimized instances are designed for memory-intensive workloads. D. Storage-optimized instances are designed for high local storage throughput. Exam tip. Choose compute-optimized instances when CPU performance is the main requirement. Question number 525. A cloud engineer needs to store data in Amazon S3. The engineer will access some of the data yearly and some of the data daily. What S3 storage class can satisfy these requirements most cost-effectively? Option A, S3 Standard. Option B, S3 Glacier Deep Archive. Option C, S3 Zone Infrequent Access, S3 Zone IA. Option D, S3 Intelligent Tiering. The correct answer is D, S3 Intelligent Tiering. Here is why. S3 Intelligent Tiering automatically moves objects between access tiers as access patterns change, suiting data accessed either daily or yearly. Why are the other options not correct? A. S3 Standard is costlier for objects that are rarely accessed. B. Glacier Deep Archive does not suit data that needs daily access. C. One Zone IA uses one availability zone and does not adapt to mixed access patterns. Exam tip. Intelligent tiering suits unknown or changing object access patterns. Question number 526. Which of the following are economic benefits of using the AWS cloud? Choose 2. Option A, consumption-based pricing. Option B, perpetual licenses. Option C, economies of scale. Option D, AWS enterprise support at no additional cost. E, bring your own hardware model. The correct answer is A, consumption-based pricing, C, economies of scale. Here is why. AWS charges according to resource consumption, while its large-scale operations help lower per-unit infrastructure costs. Why are the other options not correct? B. Perpetual licenses are not a general AWS cloud economic benefit. D. Enterprise support is a paid support offering. E. AWS does not use a general bring-your-own-hardware consumption model. Exam tip. Cloud economics combines usage-based pricing with economies of scale. Question number 527. An organization needs to provide customer service by using voice calls and web chat features. What AWS service should the company use to satisfy these requirements? Option A, Amazon Aurora. Option B, Amazon Connect. Option C, Amazon Workspaces. Option D, AWS Organizations. The correct answer is B, Amazon Connect. Here is why. Amazon Connect is a managed cloud contact center service that supports customer service through voice calls, chat, and related communication channels. Why are the other options not correct? A. Aurora is a managed relational database. C. Workspaces provides managed virtual desktops. D. Organizations centrally manages multiple AWS accounts. Exam tip. Amazon Connect provides a managed cloud contact center. Question number 528. An organization is building a web application using AWS. What AWS service will help prevent network layer DDoS attacks against the web application? Option A, AWS WAF. Option B, AWS Firewall Manager. Option C, Amazon Guard Duty. Option D, AWS Shield. The correct answer is D, AWS Shield. Here is why. AWS Shield provides managed protection against network and transport layer DDoS attacks for supported AWS resources. Why are the other options not correct? A. AWS WAF filters supported HTTP and HTTPS web requests. B. Firewall Manager centrally manages security policies across accounts. C. Guard Duty detects potential threats but does not block DDoS traffic. Exam tip. Shield protects against DDoS attacks, WAF filters web requests. Question number 529. What AWS cloud design principle is a company using when the company implements AWS Cloud Trail? Option A, activate traceability. Option B, use serverless compute architectures. Option C, perform operations as code. Option D, go global in minutes. The correct answer is A. Activate traceability. Here is why. CloudTrail records AWS API activity and creates an audit trail, supporting the security design principle of monitoring, alerting, and auditing actions. Why are the other options not correct? B. CloudTrail is not a serverless compute service. C. Operations as code uses automation and infrastructure definitions. D. Global deployment is unrelated to CloudTrail auditing. Exam tip. CloudTrail supports traceability by recording account and API activity. Question number 530. An organization needs to right-size its Amazon EC2 instances. What configuration change can satisfy this requirement with the least operational overhead? Option A. Add EC2 instances in another availability zone. Option B. Change the size and type of the EC2 instances based on utilization. Option C. Convert the payment method from on-demand to savings plans. Option D. Reprovision the EC2 instances with a larger instance type. The correct answer is B. Change the size and type of the EC2 instances based on utilization. Here is why. Right-sizing matches each instance type and size to measured workload performance and capacity needs without unnecessary resources. Why are the other options not correct? A. Adding instances improves capacity or availability but does not right-size them. C. Changing the pricing model reduces price but does not change resource capacity. D. Choosing a larger type without utilization evidence can increase waste. Exam tip. Right-sizing adjusts resource type and size from observed utilization. Question number 531. An organization needs to deploy a PostgreSQL database into Amazon RDS. The database must be highly available and fault-tolerant. What AWS solution should the company use to satisfy these requirements? Option A. Amazon RDS with a single availability zone. Option B. Amazon RDS snapshots. Option C. Amazon RDS with multiple availability zones. Option D. AWS Database Migration Service, AWS DMS. The correct answer is C. Amazon RDS with multiple availability zones. Here is why. RDS multi-availability zone maintains a synchronously replicated standby in another availability zone and provides automatic failover for high availability. Why are the other options not correct? A. A single availability zone database depends on one availability zone. B. Snapshots provide backups but not automatic high availability. D. AWS DMS migrates databases and does not provide database failover. Exam tip. RDS multi-availability zone provides high availability, read replicas provide read scaling. Question number 532. What statements accurately describe the relationships among components of AWS global infrastructure? Choose 2. Option A. There are more AWS regions than availability zones. Option B. There are more edge locations than AWS regions. Option C. An edge location is an availability zone. Option D. There are more AWS regions than edge locations. E. There are more availability zones than AWS regions. The correct answer is B. There are more edge locations than AWS regions. E. There are more availability zones than AWS regions. Here is why. AWS operates many edge locations worldwide, and every region contains multiple availability zones, so both totals exceed the number of regions. Why are the other options not correct? A. Each region contains multiple availability zones, so regions are fewer. C. An edge location is a point of presence, not an availability zone. D. AWS has more edge locations than regions. Exam tip. Regions contain multiple availability zones, while edge locations support edge services. Question number 533. An e-commerce company plans to move its data center workload to the AWS cloud to support highly dynamic usage patterns. What benefits make the AWS cloud cost-effective for the migration of this type of workload? Choose 2. Option A, reliability. Option B, security. Option C, elasticity. Option D, pay-as-you-go resource. E, high availability. The correct answer is C, elasticity, D, pay-as-you-go resource. Here is why. Elasticity adjusts capacity for dynamic demand, while pay-as-you-go pricing charges for consumed resources instead of permanently provisioned peak capacity. Why are the other options not correct? A. Reliability concerns consistent operation and recovery. B. Security concerns protection of data and workloads. E. High availability reduces interruption but is not the primary cost benefit here. Exam tip. Elasticity and pay-as-you-go reduce waste for variable workloads. Question number 534. What benefit is always free of charge with AWS, regardless of a user's AWS support plan? Option A. AWS Developer Support. Option B. AWS Developer Forums. Option C. Programmatic Case Management. Option D. AWS Technical Account Manager, TAM. The correct answer is B. AWS Developer Forums. Here is why. AWS Developer Forums were historically a free community resource available regardless of the customer's paid AWS support plan. Why are the other options not correct? A. Developer support was a paid technical support plan. C. Programmatic case management required an eligible paid support plan. D. A technical account manager was associated with higher-tier paid support. Exam tip. AWS Post replaced the historical AWS Developer Forums community service. Question number 535. What AWS service or feature allows a company to have its own logically isolated section of the AWS cloud? Option A. AWS VPN. Option B. Availability zones. Option C. Amazon Virtual Private Cloud, Amazon VPC. Option D. AWS regions. The correct answer is C. Amazon Virtual Private Cloud, Amazon VPC. Here is why. Amazon VPC provides a logically isolated virtual network where a company can launch and control its AWS resources. Why are the other options not correct? A. AWS VPN creates encrypted connectivity between networks. B. Availability zones are isolated infrastructure locations within a region. D. AWS regions are separate geographic areas. Exam tip. A VPC is a logically isolated network in the AWS cloud. Question number 536. An organization is using AWS Identity and Access Management, IAM. Who can manage the access keys of the AWS account root user? Option A. IAM users in the same account that have been granted permission. Option B. IAM roles in any account that have been granted permission. Option C. IAM users and roles that have been granted permission. Option D. The AWS account owner. The correct answer is D. The AWS account owner. Here is why. Root user access keys can be created, viewed, updated, or deleted only after signing in as the AWS account root user. Why are the other options not correct? A. IAM user permissions cannot grant control over root user access keys. B. IAM roles cannot manage root user access keys. C. IAM principals cannot be delegated this root-only credential operation. Exam tip. Only the root user can manage the root user's access keys. Question number 537. An organization needs an event history of which AWS resources the company has created. What AWS service will provide this information? Option A, Amazon Cloud Watch. Option B, AWS Cloud Trail. Option C, Amazon Aurora. Option D, Amazon Event Bridge. The correct answer is B, AWS Cloud Trail. Here is why. Cloud Trail Event History Record supported resource creation API calls and the identities that perform those actions. Why are the other options not correct? A. CloudWatch monitors metrics, logs, and alarms. C. Aurora is a managed relational database. D. EventBridge routes matching events to targets. Exam tip. Cloud Trail records resource creation, modification, and deletion API activity. Question number 538. A user needs to perform a one-time backup of an Amazon Elastic Block Store, Amazon EBS, volume that is attached to an Amazon EC2 instance. What is the most operationally efficient way to perform this backup? Option A, attach another EBS volume to the EC2 instance, and copy the contents. Option B, copy the EBS volume to a server that is running outside AWS and is connected with AWS Direct Connect. Option C, create an EBS snapshot of the volume. Option D, create a custom script to copy the EBS file contents to Amazon S3. The correct answer is C, create an EBS snapshot of the volume. Here is why. An EBS snapshot is the managed, point-in-time backup mechanism for an EBS volume and requires minimal operational effort. Why are the other options not correct? A. Copying to another volume requires manual file-level management. B. Copying outside AWS adds infrastructure and network complexity. D. A custom S3 copy script is unnecessary and less operationally efficient. Exam tip. Use EBS snapshots for point-in-time EBS volume backups. Question number 539. A developer who has no AWS cloud experience needs to use AWS technology to build a web application. What AWS service should the developer use to start building the application? Option A, Amazon SageMaker. Option B, AWS Lambda. Option C, Amazon Lightsail. Option D, Amazon Elastic Container Service, Amazon ECS. The correct answer is C, Amazon Lightsail. Here is why. Lightsail provides simplified instances, networking, storage, and application blueprints that help users with limited cloud experience launch web applications. Why are the other options not correct? A. SageMaker AI supports machine learning development. B. Lambda suits event-driven functions rather than a complete beginner web stack. D. ECS requires container concepts and additional configuration. Exam tip. Lightsail simplifies common web application deployments for beginners. Question number 540. An organization has applications that control on-premises factory equipment. What AWS service should the company use to run these applications with the least latency? Option A, AWS Outposts. Option B, Amazon EC2. Option C, AWS Lambda. Option D, AWS Fargate. The correct answer is A, AWS Outposts. Here is why. Outposts runs AWS infrastructure and supported services on premises, placing application processing close to factory equipment for low latency access. Why are the other options not correct? B. Standard regional EC2 can add network latency to on-premises equipment. C. Regional Lambda does not place infrastructure inside the factory. D. Regional Fargate does not provide on-premises AWS infrastructure by itself. Exam tip. Outposts extends AWS infrastructure to on-premises locations. Question number 541. What AWS service or feature can be used to monitor for potential disk write spikes on a system that is running on Amazon EC2? Option A. AWS Cloud Trail. Option B. AWS Health Dashboard. Option C. AWS Trusted Advisor. Option D. Amazon Cloud Watch. The correct answer is D. Amazon Cloud Watch. Here is why. CloudWatch monitors EC2 and EBS metrics and can create alarms for unusual disk write activity or spikes. Why are the other options not correct? A. Cloud Trail Record supported AWS API and account activity. B. AWS Health Report Service and account health events. C. Trusted Advisor provides best practice checks and recommendations. Exam tip. CloudWatch monitors resource metrics, Cloud Trail Records API activity. Question number 542. An organization needs to add a conversational chatbot to its website. What AWS service can the company use to satisfy this requirement? Option A. Amazon Textract. Option B. Amazon Lex. Option C. AWS Glue. Option D. Amazon Rekognition. The correct answer is B. Amazon Lex. Here is why. Amazon Lex builds conversational interfaces that understand text or speech for chatbots and voice assistants. Why are the other options not correct? A. Textract extracts text and structured data from documents. C. AWS Glue discovers, prepares, and integrates data. D. Rekognition analyzes images and video. Exam tip. Lex builds chatbots, Poly converts text to speech. Question number 543. What is the primary use case for Amazon Guard Duty? Option A. Prevention of DDoS attacks. Option B. Protection against SQL injection attacks. Option C. Automatic monitoring for threats to AWS workloads. Option D. Automatic provisioning of AWS resources. The correct answer is C. Automatic monitoring for threats to AWS workloads. Here is why. Guard Duty continuously analyzes AWS data sources to detect malicious activity and unauthorized behavior in accounts and workloads. Why are the other options not correct? A. AWS Shield provides managed DDoS protection. B. AWS WAF can filter web requests that match SQL injection patterns. D. CloudFormation and other deployment tools provision AWS resources. Exam tip. Guard Duty detects threats, Inspector identifies vulnerabilities. Question number 544. What VPC component can a company use to set up a virtual firewall at the Amazon EC2 instance level? Option A. Network ACL. Option B. Security Group. Option C. Route Table. Option D. NAT Gateway. The correct answer is B. Security Group. Here is why. A security group is a stateful virtual firewall that controls inbound and outbound traffic for associated resources such as EC2 instances. Why are the other options not correct? A. A network ACL controls traffic at the subnet boundary. C. A route table determines where network traffic is directed. D. A NAT gateway provides outbound connectivity for private resources. Exam tip. Security groups protect resources, network ACLs protect subnets. Question number 545. A developer needs to interact with AWS by using the AWS CLI. What security feature or AWS service must be provisioned in the developer's account to satisfy this requirement? Option A. Username and password. Option B. AWS Systems Manager. Option C. Root password access. Option D. AWS access key. The correct answer is D. AWS Access Key. Here is why. AWS CLI requests can be signed with an access key ID and secret access key for an authorized IAM identity. Why are the other options not correct? A. A console username and password do not authenticate standard CLI requests. B. Systems Manager is not required to authenticate the AWS CLI. C. Root credentials should not be used for routine command line access. Exam tip. Use authorized credentials for the CLI and avoid root access keys. Question number 546. A food delivery company needs to block users in certain countries from accessing its website. What AWS service should the company use to satisfy this requirement? Option A. AWS WAF. Option B. AWS Control Tower. Option C. Amazon Fraud Detector. Option D. Amazon Pinpoint. The correct answer is A. AWS WAF. Here is why. AWS WAF geo-match rules can identify requests by country and block access from specified geographic locations. Why are the other options not correct? B. Control Tower establishes and governs multi-account environments. C. Fraud Detector identifies potentially fraudulent online activities. D. Pinpoint supports customer engagement and messaging. Exam tip. AWS WAF filters supported web requests by IP, country, and request patterns. Question number 547. What is a customer responsibility under the AWS Shared Responsibility Model when using AWS Lambda? Option A. Maintenance of the underlying Lambda hardware. Option B. Maintenance of the Lambda networking infrastructure. Option C. The code and libraries that run in the Lambda functions. Option D. The Lambda server software. The correct answer is C. The code and libraries that run in the Lambda functions. Here is why. Lambda customers manage their function code, included libraries, data, configuration, and permissions. Why are the other options not correct? A. AWS maintains the hardware that runs Lambda. B. AWS maintains Lambda's underlying networking infrastructure. D. AWS manages the server software and runtime infrastructure for Lambda. Exam tip. Lambda customers manage code and configuration, AWS manages servers. Question number 548. What tasks are the responsibility of AWS under the AWS Shared Responsibility Model? Choose 2. Option A. Configure AWS Identity and Access Management, IAM. Option B. Configure security groups on Amazon EC2 instances. Option C. Secure the access of physical AWS facilities. Option D. Patch applications that run on Amazon EC2 instances. E. Perform infrastructure patching and maintenance. The correct answer is C. Secure the access of physical AWS facilities. E. Perform infrastructure patching and maintenance. Here is why. AWS protects its physical facilities and maintains and patches the infrastructure that operates AWS services. Why are the other options not correct? A. Customers configure their IAM identities and permissions. B. Customers configure security groups for their EC2 resources. D. Customers patch applications that they deploy on EC2. Exam tip. AWS secures and maintains cloud infrastructure, customers secure their workloads. Question number 549. An organization's compliance officer needs to review the AWS Service Organization Control, SOC, reports. What AWS service or feature should the compliance officer use to complete this task? Option A. AWS Artifact. Option B. AWS Concierge Support. Option C. AWS Support. Option D. AWS Trusted Advisor. The correct answer is A. AWS Artifact. Here is why. AWS Artifact provides on-demand access to AWS compliance reports, including service organization control reports. Why are the other options not correct? B. Concierge support assists eligible customers with billing and account matters. C. AWS support provides technical or account assistance based on the support offering. D. Trusted advisor provides best practice checks and recommendations. Exam tip. Use AWS Artifact to obtain AWS compliance reports and agreements. You have completed Part 10 of the CLF-C02 practice series. Continue your preparation by opening the complete playlist and watching the remaining parts in sequence. Please like this video, subscribe to Tech with Kaushik, and enable notifications for more certification exam preparation content. Share your score, questions, or feedback in the comments. Thank you for watching. See you in the next part.